Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm finally setting up my bullet journal for January. I took a bit of time off after my last video, so that's why this one is a bit late, but I hope you still find it useful, so let's get into it. I'm using my A5 bullet journal from Archer and Olive that was very kindly gifted to me, and then I also bought the Warm Fall collection of their acrylographs, which I wanted to do for quite a while, and the colors are just gorgeous. You can use my affiliate code ARTandBoudros to get 10% off, which also helps to support me and my channel. And I picked out 4 colors for this theme, so I'm using the shades White, Dusty Mint, Forest Green, and Lavender. I also used my Muji gel pen, which I forgot to show, and then lastly this brown craft paper tape with a grid from Stationery Pal. I'm starting off with a simple calendar that I use to plan out my work, so I used the brown tape as a background for the weekdays on the top, and then I wrote the weekdays in white. The days in this calendar are 2x3 spaces, and here I'm using the very dark green and a ruler to create the borders. For those of you who are new to my channel, I use this calendar kind of like a habit tracker, so I make a color code for different types of work I have to do, like for YouTube or university, and then I color in every day whichever task I need to do. So for example, for YouTube I use the lavender shade, so I just draw a little circle for the days when I know I need to work on something YouTube related. This way I not only have an overview of all the dates, but also of when I have free time and when I'm more busy, and something I also wanted to work on is a better work-life balance, so hopefully this calendar can help with that as well. Then I'm using the lavender shade to write the dates into the first row of each day, and as a theme for this month I wanted to draw some little snowdrops, because we usually see the first ones in January where I live, and I think they're just really cute. I used the light green to cross out the days from December and February, since I like including them, but I won't actually use them. Underneath the calendar is where I make my color code, so I choose a color for everything I want to track this month, and I needed a 4th color, so I chose this kind of brownish shade from the same set, and this month I'm tracking YouTube, Instagram, university, and my freelance job. Then to decorate the calendar, I'm drawing 3 little snowdrops on the left side, and I use the minty green for the stems and the leaves, and for the blossoms, of course, they're actually white, but since you wouldn't be able to see it on the paper, I decided to use the lavender shade. The blossoms have 3 elongated petals, and the leaves are very long and thin, which I think makes them look super elegant. I also used the dark green to draw a few dots here and there, which is something I pretty much always do, and it just makes the doodles look more finished. On the bottom I used some more of that paper tape to create my YouTube and Instagram growth trackers, where I write down my subscriber and follower count on the first and the last day of the month, which is always super interesting to look back on. And lastly, I drew another snowdrop on the right to balance out the page a bit. Moving on to my January cover page, I wanted to keep things super simple, so I first cut out a bigger rectangle of the grid paper for the middle of the page, and I wrote January in all caps on the top, and then I also added a mini calendar underneath, not really because I needed it, but just to fill in the space a bit more. I chose a super simple font for most of the setup, and I like to use the grid as a guide to kind of space out the letters evenly, which makes them look a bit nicer. Then I decided to draw a snowdrop on the bottom left and the top right corner of the brown paper to incorporate the doodles and also to create a bit more of an interesting layout. I like to place things on a diagonal axis a lot because to me it's a lot more visually appealing than having everything be super symmetrical. To finish it off, I added a border in the dark green again, leaving out space for the doodles, and I think this turned out super pretty even though it's a super simple layout. So that's it for these first 2 pages, and let's move on to my habit trackers. For the title, I used the paper tape again to keep things consistent, and I placed it on the left side on the top and wrote habits in that same simple font like on the cover page. On the right, I drew some smaller snowdrops, and I made sure to always vary the shapes a little and have them facing in different directions. I also drew some grass on the bottom, which I thought looked super cute, and then I also drew a border all around in the dark green shade. Keeping your colors consistent throughout your setup is definitely something I would recommend. So for example, I mainly use the dark green for borders and the lavender shade for titles and such, and this way your spreads always look cohesive and balanced. For my habit trackers, I wanted to use the paper tape again, and the rectangles are 7 spaces wide for the weekdays and then 6 spaces tall for the weeks, so it's the same size as a mini calendar. This month I'm tracking 6 daily habits, so I placed the first 2 on the left, the next 2 on the right, and then the last 2 on the left again. I wrote the titles in the dark green shade this time because it stands out a bit more than the lavender shade, which I used for the weekdays underneath instead. My daily habits this month are doing my morning routine, flossing my teeth, planning my day in my bullet journal, doing the 5-minute journal, working out or doing some yoga, and doing my nighttime routine. And the way I will use these trackers is I will just draw a white circle in a grid space when I completed the habit, so at the end of the month I can see which habits I still need to work on. I also wanted to cross out the days from December and February in my daily habits, but I actually forgot when I was filming, so I would just use the white for it. Then, since there are 3 empty sections, I wanted to fill them with more snowdrops, and I accidentally made the 2 sections on the right a bit too narrow because I left a space empty next to the title on the top, but I just fixed it later on. I drew 2 snowdrops and then later added a third one to the sections I wanted to fix, but I still thought it came out really pretty, and I always leave my mistakes in the video because I think it's useful to see how you can fix them, and also because making mistakes is really not a big deal, so don't be afraid to cover things up or glue pages together if you don't like them. So then here I'm adding a border with the dark green to the doodles, and that's when I noticed that they were just a bit too narrow, so I made the sections a bit wider, and I also did the same thing for the doodle on the top. I just covered the old border with white, and since the acrylographs are super opaque, you can always color on top of another color, and you don't really notice it. Then, like I mentioned, I just added another snowdrop to make the doodles look a bit less off-center, and I think it still turned out really cute that way. Here I'm adding the border to the doodle in the middle that I didn't have to change, and then I did the same fix for the bottom doodle. All the way in the bottom, I like adding some habits that I do on a weekly basis, so I wrote them with the dark green, and again I used the grid as a guide to place the letters. And this month I wanted to track doing my weekly setups, doing a little weekly reset, and having a self-care day. And then to actually track them, I drew 5 little circles for the weeks in January, which technically I guess there are 6, but the 1st of January is just a Sunday, so I left it out. On the right page, I wanted to add my Instagram planner, which I use to plan out my posts on Instagram. I haven't been super active at the end of December, but I've been pretty consistent this year, so I definitely wanted to keep it up. I kept the style of the header the same, so with the brown paper tape, the title in white, and some snowdrops on the right side. Then for my Instagram planner, I like using a simple section, so it's just a rectangle as wide as a page, and I divide it into 3 columns. I make the planner 10 spaces tall because that's how many posts I usually like to plan out each month. The first section is where I would write down what I want to post, the second is for when I want to post it, and the last column is where I track my progress, so that's why I'm making another color code on the top. I like to see what I still need to do for each post, so I track when I created a spread, when I took photos, when I edited them, and then when I posted them to Instagram. I use those same 4 colors as for my work planner, and then I draw a circle in each of the colors in the last column of the planner so that I can color them in once I finish each of the steps. You could also use this method for other things that need more planning, like for assignments in school or university, or just bigger projects in general. I also just added some dots in the first column because I thought it looked cute, and then on the bottom I always include something a little bit different each month, and this time I wanted some space to write down some general to-dos. Since my semester is ending pretty soon, I will have lots of assignments and presentations to do for university, so I just want to keep track of everything in one space. I decided to include a smaller section for my priorities and then a larger one for my assignments for university, and I wrote the titles with the lavender shade and then made a simple border with the green again. Then I just drew some dots again in the first row of the sections, kind of like bullet points, because I also wanted to include the light green a bit more. And then of course I filled that empty space with some more snowdrops, and the leaves overlapped a bit here and there, but I actually thought it looked really cute as well. So that's it for these two, and let's move on to my first weekly spread of January. I actually used my weekly layout spread from my 2023 setup to determine the spacing, so if you haven't seen my last video, I'll leave a link to it in my description. Then I used 4 squares of the paper tape for some of the daily sections, so each of them is 11 by 11 spaces, and I placed my daily sections on the top and the bottom, and then left the middle empty for now. I used the paper tape for every second day, and then I used the dark green as a border for the rest of them, and also for the first section where I wanted to place another mini calendar. Here I'm making the mini calendar on the top left section, so I wrote the weekdays with the lavender shade and the dates with my black gel pen. I crossed out the other days again with the light green, and then I drew another snowdrop on the right, and I also wrote week 1 underneath the mini calendar to fill up the section. Then I wrote the weekdays and the dates, so I used the white for the brown sections and then the lavender for the white sections, and I wrote the weekday on the top left and the date on the bottom right, again kind of using that diagonal axis to create more interest. The nice thing about this brown paper tape is that the grid actually lines up with the grid of the journal, so 1 square in the bullet journal equals 4 little squares on the tape, so it's really easy to use it in setups. For the middle part, I wanted to include some more doodles, but also a little reminder, so I found one that says, "You are your home, take care of yourself," which I thought was so sweet and something I definitely want to remind myself of. I wrote the first part on the left page and the second on the right, and then I drew 2 little snowdrops like for the cover page on the corners of the sections, and then I wrote the quote into the middle and also added a border. Because it looked a bit empty, I also added the small dots and a little flourish underneath and above the quote. And then lastly, I drew a bunch more snowdrops with some grass in the other 2 sections, and then also added a border around them, which I think ended up looking super pretty. Now, I don't really have anything else to add as commentary here, but I just wanted to say a quick thank you for all of the support on my last video. I know it can get annoying, I was like talking about subscriber counts and views and such, so I'll keep it short, but our community grew so fast in just a couple of days, so I wanted to say hi to all of my new viewers. I really hope you enjoyed this video as well, and I really appreciate all the kind comments, and also thank you for your patience with this video. I really hope it was worth the wait. Alright, and that is it for this setup, so let's go ahead and do a little flip through. I was actually struggling a bit with how I wanted to do this theme at first, but I think it turned out really pretty. I really like doing themes that are super simple and quick to do because I actually want to be able to use my journal, and if it takes me too long to set up, I probably won't use it as much, if at all, so I feel like this is the perfect mix for me. Also, I mentioned this in my last video, but to me, a color palette can really make or break a setup, and I really like this one, so I hope you like it as well. If you have any questions or suggestions, definitely leave them in the comments. Of course, if you're new to my channel, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, as always, thank you guys for watching, and I hope I'll see you again next time. Bye!